are starting off actually just by looking at some of the most popular decks out there in the expanded format using this website, dinodata.app. Go to pokemon.dinodata.app/app in order to find it. You can do a breakdown, look at, based on all the recent tournaments since Vivid Voltage has been released, what decks have been played, what their win rates are. And so, we're going through the list. Most of these decks that are up here in the top tier of playability, at least, have close to a 70% win rate. 60 is about the lowest you'll see. But I think the especially interesting thing is going to this matchups tab. And in the matchups tab, you can select a bunch of different archetypes. So in this case, I selected 10 already, the 10 up here on the screen. And based on recent tournaments, it actually tells you the matchup spread between different decks. So, for example, Colossal has a 39% win rate against Dragapult Garbodor. It went 9-14. And so the red colors are better, blue colors are worse. And so you can just very quickly see a deck's matchup spread. And based on this, actually, just looking at the various decks, you want to see as little blue as possible. I think Dragapult Garbodor clearly has a pretty good set of matchups. The one bad one being Turbo Dark 0-19, which is pretty bad. I think it is winnable, but it's a really bad matchup. The other one is Zacian ADP with a 9-11 record, 45% win rate. So it's close to a 50-50. I think that's about right, but that deck is just really powerful. So I think Dragapult Garb, good matchups pretty much across the board. Zacian ADP, another one with a whole lot of 50-50s. So 53 against Colossal, 55 against Dragapult, 80 against Tina Chomp. But the bad matchups you're looking at are Pikarom, 7-12, and Eggrow, 2-7. Those are not decks that I actually want to take a bad matchup against. If we looked at the chart, the meta breakdown, Pikarom is the most played deck in Expanded right now. So I don't want to take a bad matchup to Pikarom, don't want to take a bad matchup to Dragapult. I don't want to take a bad matchup to Colossal if I can, just because I know that has been gaining in popularity. It won a recent tournament. And then Eggrow down here, it's a little bit lower in terms of the number of people playing it, but I think it's a pretty strong deck. As you can see, a 71% win rate between the 10 people who played it. So based on this, I think you could make a good case that Dragapult Garbodor is the best deck to play in Expanded right now. So we have one Crobat V with the Dark Asset ability. When you bench it, you can draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. Similarly, Dedenne GX with Dede Change. Instead of drawing until you have 6, you discard your hand and draw 6 cards. Both of them are really powerful, depends on the right situation. For support Pokemon, we also have 2 Tapu Lele GX, old-fashioned, but has the Wonder Tag ability, which lets you search for a supporter when you bench it. Really helpful just because we do need a lot of supporters in the early turns. We need energy in the early turns, that's really the biggest thing, and Pokemon in play. So grabbing a supporter is helpful. Plus, if we start with Wobbuffet, the Bide Barricade ability blocks abilities from Psychic Pokemon, but Tapu Lele is Psychic. So you can go ahead and bench Tapu Lele and still use the ability, even if you're locking with Wobbuffet. But as for the bulk of the deck, we are playing 2-2 Dragapult V Max. So starting with 2 Dragapult V, Bite, you use it every once in a while, and Jet Assault is actually a pretty good attack. This is your highest damage attack to the active Pokemon. It does 140 damage just for 2 energy if you switch from the bench to the active. But the V Max, star of the deck, We have Shred for 60 damage. You won't be using that too often, but it does actually get through different effects. So if someone's trying to wall you with Hoopa, or something that blocks like evolution Pokemon, you can get through Shred. And then Max Phantom, this is the big attack, 130 damage, and you place 5 damage counters anywhere on their bench. So you can spread damage around in order to set up future knockouts. It is just a really strong card overall. 2 energy, gets a lot of very consistent and frankly like dangerous output when you're up against it. 320 HP, Dark Weakness, which right now is actually pretty good. Pretty good. Turbo Dark is falling out of favor, and we've seen things like Colossal, since that was released in Vivid Voltage, sort of shine, and Turbo Dark definitely loses to Colossal. And it also has resistance against Colossal, another nice thing. So maybe instead of getting a 2-shot, they are getting a 3-shot on your Dragapult, whereas you are setting things up around the board. So that's your main attacker, but we also do have this Garbodor line. So we're starting with 2 Trubbish, Garbage Collection, and 2 Trubbish with Acid Spray. I think this is the best attack that Trubbish has, but if you want a 70 HP Trubbish, which I think is good as well, I think Acid Spray is best because you have a chance to disrupt them as well. You won't be attacking with either of these unless you're in a bad spot, but it's good to have. Then we have Garbotoxin Garbodor that locks all abilities in play in their hand in the discard pile when it has a Pokemon tool attached. So we play 6 Pokemon tools. We play 4 Floatstone and 2 Muscle Band. And so you can slap those on a Trubbish early on, evolve to Garbodor, and then lock everyone out of abilities. The other Garbodor we have is just as important in a lot of matchups. This is the Trashalanche Garbodor, where for 1 energy, it does 20 damage for each item card in your opponent's discard pile. So if we're thinking about the big decks that we mentioned before, things like Pikarom, which is the most played deck out there, but also just things like Tinachomp or Mewtwo or even Mewbox, like these are decks that are going to be using a good number of items, and so once you get to the late game, you'll be able to, hit for a lot of damage with Trashalanche. I have taken 1-hit knockouts on V Maxes with Trashalanche before, when people aren't very cautious about their item use. So that is the base of the deck. Turn 1, you want to get a Dragapult, at least 1 Trubbish down, and you want to get an energy on the Dragapult. And if you've done that, then you're pretty well set up. But for the rest of the deck, we'll go through the supporters first. So we have 4 Professor Juniper, discard your hand, draw 7 cards. We have 2 N. Each player shuffles their hand into their deck and then draws a card for each of their remaining prize cards. And N is very good disruption, but also good draw early on. So I think playing 2 is good because you always want to have access to 1. We play 1 Chorus, our last draw supporter. Shuffle your hand into your deck and then draw a card for each benched Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponent's. So if you're playing this, especially if you're playing against something like Eternatus or Zoroark, or Snorlax, all of those cards are going to have really big benches, but even something like Pikarom is probably going to fill up their bench with 4 to 5, and then if you have 4 to 5 on your bench, you're drawing between 8 to 10 cards with Chorus. Really strong. But it is weak early game, so you don't want to start with it. And then we have 2 Guzma. 2 is really important. This is switch one of your opponent's benched Pokemon with their active, and if you do, switch your active with one of your benched Pokemon. Guzma is useful as a switching out if you need it, but more often it's used to take knockouts. And because we are playing 4 Floatstone, there will almost always be a Floatstone in play that we can use to freely retreat whatever it is that we switched into with Guzma. We also play 3 VS Seeker to get supporters back from our discard pile into our hand. And the last supporter we play is a tech card for ADPZ, which is Pokemon Ranger. Remove all effects of attacks on each player and their Pokemon. So if they use Altered Creation, which why don't we If they use Altered Creation GX to add 30 damage and take extra prize cards for every knockout they take, you play down Pokemon Ranger and that completely nullifies their GX attack. So that's something that if you can play it early against ADPZ, you can almost win the game right there. It makes a really big difference. As for the rest of the deck, we are playing a lot of Ball Search or Mysterious Treasure. 4 treasures because it searches out every Psychic Pokemon in the deck, and then 4 Quick Ball because it searches out every basic Pokemon in the deck, which is important to be able to get Crobat and Dedenne, since Crobat is Dark type and Dedenne is Lightning. We also do have 1 Rescue Stretcher to get Pokemon back from the discard. I think that's really important because some games you will have to discard parts of your Dragapult line, parts of your Garbodor line, or maybe you just need an extra Trashalanche. And this is just a really versatile card to be able to do all of those things. Adventure Bag helps you search for Pokemon tools. I think this is like the 60th card in the list. If I was going to cut anything, it would probably be Adventure Bag, but for now it is really useful, especially early on, to be able to go grab those tools that you need to set up the Garbodor lock. We are also playing 3 Enhanced Hammer to discard Special Energy. That's helpful against, well, all of the energy that Colossal is playing. Most of those are going to be like Strong Energy or whatever the new fighting energy is called that reduces damage. It's helpful against Garchomp Giratina, their Double Dragon energy. Helpful against Mew Box or Mewtwo and Mew. And even if Pikarom has like some Speed Lightning in play, then that's another way that you can get rid of some of their energy, set them back a turn, or at the very least just force them to burn more resources to get back to where they want to be. So it's a good card, good card. And what do we have left? Well, we have 1 Field Blower to get rid of stadium cards in play or to get rid of opponents' tool cards. You can even get rid of your own Floatstones or Muscle Bands if needed, but that's sort of a niche play. And then the final 2 cards in the deck, we are playing 1 Parallel City. It is a stadium card that you can play in either direction, and whichever side is facing that opponent or that player is the side that affects them. So the red side reduces damage done by attacks from grass, fire, and water Pokemon by 20 damage. And the blue side is really the powerful side. It reduces their bench down to 3. So let's say it is a deck that's trying to fill up their bench, get a lot of resources in play. You can Parallel City them down to 3 benched Pokemon and make sure that they have to lose some valuable resources. And the final card here is Computer Search. I think because it is really important that you set up early, Computer Search I prefer for right now compared to Dowsing Machine, since it is going to be especially useful in the early game, and even in the late game it can get you that last card you need from your deck.